What's up, everyone? I'm glad to be back and relaunching the channel for coverage of the 2017 NFL Draft. I've been working on videos throughout the 2016 regular season and waiting to release them until now, so you can expect at least 4 videos to come out all within the next 2 weeks, one on Tuesdays and one on Thursdays. I'm getting the ball rolling this year and starting off draft coverage with a name you already know, at least you should already know him, Leonard Fournette, running back out of LSU. If you follow football at any level in any capacity, you've probably at least heard his name before. And if you live in the state of Louisiana, you probably first heard his name years ago when he was still just a kid. Fournette's been a local legend in the New Orleans area for a long time, and for virtually the entire time he's played football, he's been seen as the next great generational talent at running back. And you know what? After seeing him for myself at LSU, I'd say that all the legends are true. When you look at him carry the ball, even on a bad ankle that he was playing through all season long, he does things from an athleticism standpoint that I've only seen maybe 2 or 3 other running backs ever do before. I talked last spring about the kind of athlete that Jalen Smith was at linebacker, and Fournette is easily in his class as a ball carrier. I mean, easily. At 235 pounds, again on a bum ankle, he clocked 22.9 miles per hour on a touchdown run against Ole Miss. For some perspective, no players in the entirety of the NFL have come close to that mark on any scoring play in the last 2 full seasons. None of them. As of the time of me making this video, the top speed in the NFL in 2016 was Xavier Rhodes at 22.4 miles per hour on a pick 6. And keep in mind that Rhodes ran a 4.43 at the combine with a 40.5-inch vertical. And he ran that 4.43 at 25 pounds under Fournette's playing weight. And yet he still did not sniff Fournette's top speed against Ole Miss. That is just downright unheard of to have that much bulk and still run that fast. And it's not like that run was a one-time thing where a safety took a bad angle. Every carry that he gets to the edge, you see that same burst and that same long speed. If you give him an inch, he will take a mile before you know what happened. And if you happen to be standing in his way, he's not only fast, but he has devastating power to just run right over you. Multiple times every game, when he would hit that second gear in the open field, he would just lower his shoulder and absolutely bury them. I mean, ruthlessly put them ass first on the ground. Fournette's got an upright running style most of the time, so naturally he'll have some balance issues from time to time if people get him around the feet. Shorter ball carriers like Doug Martin and Ezekiel Elliott tend to step out of those kinds of tackles because they have a lower center of gravity. But if you go low on Fournette and he drops his hips and goes low with you to meet that contact, all of a sudden that leverage advantage is gone and his natural power is enough to just outright flatten people. When that shoulder drops against a linebacker and he's got momentum, they lose, period. That's why gang tackling and hitting Fournette at the line of scrimmage before he gets up to speed are virtually the only ways to stop him. More often than not, if he's got a one-on-one in space, that one tackler is not enough to bring him down. You need 11 bodies flying to the football at all times or it's a touchdown, plain and simple. You cannot rely on only one force player on the edge to contain him for the entire game, because it will not happen. You need everyone to show up to that party. That's how Alabama was able to limit him to arguably the 2 worst games of his career. They rallied to the ball as a team on every play, they dominated the offensive line so there were no holes for him to run through in the first place, and they played gap-sound, disciplined defense. Now it also helps that the entire Bama front 7 is going to play in the NFL, while LSU has maybe 2 offensive linemen that will make a pro roster. But still, they did not give Fournette that inch, so he never got to take that mile. In the NFL, luckily for Fournette, he'll presumably have a better offensive line blocking for him, he'll have a better quarterback in front of him, and hopefully an offensive coordinator that can build a proper game plan. He had none of those things at LSU, and he was still the most feared running back in college football. He was a marked man on every single play, and yet week after week, season after season, Fournette took on all comers and won. Well, except for Nick Saban, of course. So when you look at where he fits best in the NFL, to me, it's with a team that's lacking an identity or maybe has a quarterback that is incapable of putting an entire offense on his shoulders. With Fournette being so dangerous, the only way to really stop him is to have your linebackers screaming downhill on early downs to meet him in the hole and keep him from getting momentum. Because once he's up to speed, he can wreck the game all by himself. If linebackers have to cheat that hard downhill, however, all of a sudden the middle of the field becomes vulnerable to play action. It gives quarterbacks easy throws and forces defense to pick their poison. The easier it is to get a young quarterback into rhythm, the easier completions you give him to move the chains, the less exposed you are to him making mistakes. Now, gee, I wonder which team that's picking in the draft in the top 5 every year could use that kind of help for their offense. But anyway, I digress. Stylistically, Fournette's next team in the NFL, cough cough Jaguars, is going to have to be cognizant of what kinds of runs he's excelling at as well. He is a north-south runner through and through, meaning putting him in the shotgun and doing zone read type of stuff isn't really going to be using his strongest skill set. If you want to do that, go draft Dalvin Cook instead. Fournette loves running behind a fullback and mashing defenses inside with ISOs and other gap scheme runs that get him downhill as soon as possible. When he is asked to read laterally on runs that move east-west, like outside zone, pin and pull zone, toss plays, etc., that's where he sometimes misreads things and puts himself into bad spots. I've talked about this a little bit before in my Todd Gurley video, but essentially gap scheme runs and zone scheme runs are not really read the same way. Zone runs are read outside in, meaning he's reading the edge defender and working his way inside from gap to gap until the cutback lane presents itself. Gap scheme runs, however, are read from the inside out. You've got a designed hole for the play, and if it isn't there, you read gap to gap moving towards the edge. If you need to, you bubble it all the way outside and try to get the edge for a big gain, or if both inside and outside are all plugged up, you just lower your pads and try to push the pile. It's two totally opposite ways of reading different kinds of runs, and most running backs coming out of college aren't really used to reading both. In Fournette's case, with LSU being a primarily gap scheme run team, he's sometimes misreading zone plays because he gets caught reading inside out instead of outside in. And he might take an early cutback lane that he really should not have because he's just trying to get downhill as quickly as possible. This play in the third quarter of the Ole Miss game is a good example of those mistakes. It's a pin and pull zone out of a single back set. He takes the cutback lane early for like 3 yards when there was multiple defenders sitting right there to fill. He never even considered following his pulling left guard that was wrapping around the tight end of the edge, and that's on the front side of the play where he's supposed to be starting his read in the first place. If he read his blocks all the way to the edge like he was supposed to do, he likely would have gotten a minimum 20-yard gain, especially with his explosiveness, and maybe even went all the way for another 50-yard touchdown. That's why you read these kinds of runs outside in and not inside out, because they are designed to at least attempt to get you to the edge. Following a fullback on an ISO run is where he's most comfortable, like I said before, and LSU built their offense around that. So when they do run east-west concepts and he doesn't have that fullback in front of him, maybe because it's a single back set, maybe they're running 2 tight ends, he gets a little lost sometimes because he's so used to just trusting his fullback to make the right read and following him into the fray. Now from there, Fournette always reads off his fullback's block to see where linebackers are leveraging themselves in the hole, and he lets instinct take over from there and do the rest. It's kind of a way to keep Fournette's mind clear and he doesn't have to think too much while reading the line of scrimmage. He can just hit that hole as fast and as hard as possible and trust that his lead blocker made the right decision. And as long as Fournette is allowed to freely hit that line of scrimmage at full speed without second guessing himself or his lead blocker, good things are going to happen. It takes time to learn how to read zone runs without a lead blocker if you aren't used to it, and as of right now, Leonard Fournette just isn't used to it. That's why on zone runs, at least for the first year of his career in the pros, it's probably wise to have him run it out of a 2-back set just to keep him comfortable, be in familiar territory, and he'll just do the rest once he's cleared to the second level. And it's not like zone runs out of 21 or 22 personnel or some kind of new concept either. Gary Kubiak ran that kind of system for years in Houston with Arian Foster and Vontae Leach paving the way, and it worked to perfection. If Fournette's future NFL team is so insistent on running a zone run system, they can just do the same thing. Run it out of 21 personnel, keep him comfortable, eventually he'll pick it up. Now, this doesn't mean that Fournette cannot read zone blocking at all. There were several plays where he made the correct read, hit the right cutback lane, and everything was just fine. It's not like he has a bad football IQ or anything. I'm not saying anything like that at all. I just think that if I'm his offensive coordinator, it's probably smarter to tailor my offense to him in the first place with gap scheme runs and 2-back sets so that I can get the most out of him. If I'm drafting a running back this high, I might as well build around him, right? Adrian Peterson has said for a decade now that he prefers running behind a fullback because he doesn't have to think as much, which can lead to hesitation, and he's arguably one of the 5 greatest running backs of all time. Having a preference for what kind of playbook to run is not a bad thing at all, especially when you're as physically talented as Fournette is. It would be insane to make him run an offense that he's not comfortable with, just like it's insane to make a young, highly drafted quarterback run an offense that they're not comfortable with. So you might as well just put him in a situation and in a scheme where he can have maximum impact, just like the Vikings have done for the last 10 years with Peterson. If he's going to be your offensive identity, make it easier for him to be your offensive identity. And speaking of Peterson, a lot of people say that Fournette is the best back since AD came out, but to me, he's not Adrian Peterson. He's even better. He's the same caliber of athlete as Peterson, no question. Both of them run in the high 4.3s to low 4.4s, though Fournette runs that time at about 10 to 15 pounds heavier than Peterson did as a Sooner. They excel in the same style of offense, of course. However, after all these years, Peterson is still taken off the field in pass protection situations in favor of Matt Asiata, and he's still not really good at receiving either. He's only topped 40 receptions twice in 10 years, and 40 receptions in a season is less than 3 catches a game. That's pretty low by modern NFL standards, especially for a lead back. Fournette has shown a lot of potential in pass protection. His technique is still kind of sloppy, but he's at least shown before that he can square his hips and neutralize a blitzer with his raw power. And in 2016, LSU finally started putting him to work as a receiver as well. He didn't get the ball nearly as much as he probably should have in the passing game because he missed several games due to injury, he was limited in several others, and he had a terrible quarterback. But he did show that he was a hands catcher and that he could track the deep ball down the sideline if he needs to. And to me, that's all I need to see to classify him as a true 3-down back. So if he's got all the pure running skills of Adrian Peterson, while also showing that he could potentially be a full-time pass protector and receiving target, then yeah, I consider him a better prospect than Peterson himself. I have no problem saying that. If we're going to compare Fournette to anyone out of any running back in history, to be honest, it's Earl Campbell. Every time he touches the ball, and I mean every time, I see Earl. The speed, the power, the unmitigated and relentless violence. He's even got the same unreasonably thick lower body build that Campbell had. I mean, shit, they're both built like a damn tree. He's definitely my number 1 prospect in this class, even above Myles Garrett, so that's how highly I think of him and his physical skill set. You could slot him literally anywhere in the top 5, and I would not have a problem with it, because to me, Earl Campbell was well worth the first overall pick that the Oilers spent on him in 1978. There really is no pick in 2017 that I consider too early for Leonard Fournette. Now, he won't go first overall. We know that probably won't happen because Cleveland has, to be honest, way bigger needs than running back, and Myles Garrett's sitting right there. But he is the first overall player on my board. A guy like Leonard Fournette changes your offense, flat out. He changes the entire identity of your offense from the moment he steps foot in the building. If you've got a quarterback that needs help, he does it in 3 different ways. He opens up the play-action pass game because linebackers have to cheat so hard downhill to stop him. He can pass protect and keep your guy clean. He can be a big play option as a receiver if he gets the ball in space. There are other backs in this class that can do some of those things at an elite level, but not everything. He does everything. And as a Texans fan, I'm really hoping that the Jaguars take somebody else because I do not want to see this man run wild in the AFC South for the next decade. I'm just being 100% honest here. That is my doomsday scenario. I will say this though, even if I have to root against him if he ends up on an AFC South team, I'm probably going to end up trying to draft him in every single fantasy league I'm in next season, so I can root for him that way. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I'm releasing another episode on Fournette's biggest, I guess you could call him a rival, a contemporary in this draft class, Dalvin Cook out of Florida State. There's been a lot of noise lately by some people that think he and not Fournette is the best running back in this class. And while there is an argument for that in some ways, I do agree that there is an argument. I'm going to show you guys on Thursday what makes Cook such a different kind of prospect from Fournette and how he also needs to land in the right style of system in order to maximize his potential. If you want to contribute to the channel and help it grow, you can of course find links to my Twitter and Patreon accounts in the description and annotations. And a big thank you to everyone who stuck by the channel and waited patiently for it to return during my little forced hiatus. All that nonsense has been cleared up, i.e. I quit my job so that I can continue doing this channel, and you can expect new episodes to be coming out much more regularly in the future, again starting on Thursday with the Dalvin Cook breakdown. Anyway, until then, later.